What's going on, Poppers? Welcome to Poppin Predictions, where we believe movies aren't over at the end, but are meant to be continued. You're here with Andy and Marqueze, where we ponder what happens in a story once the credits begin to roll. Quick shout out, we're recording this on Valentine's Day, so happy belated Valentine's Day, because by the time you get this, it'll be well past it.
Or Singles Awareness Day for those who...
Or Singles Awareness Day. You know, I'm very fortunate that I have my lovely fiance. Happy Singles Awareness Day. Happy belated Valentine's Day. And getting back to the episode, we are doing Hereditary today. Hereditary is a horror film written and directed by Ari Aster. Hereditary follows a grieving family that is haunted by tragic and disturbing occurrences following the death of the family matriarch. Marqueze, why don't you go and give us a deeper dive on what Hereditary is about?
Yeah, so Hereditary is really a movie that follows this family, as we mentioned, that's gone through a lot of tragic and disturbing kind of occurrences. But more particularly, it's the grieving of the family. So it's how this family is dealing with grief, which is one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this movie. It's not your typical horror film in the sense of the goal is simply to scare you, like where they could kind of care less about the plot. This is the exact opposite, whereas the writer and director Ari Aster really had themes and emotions and all that he wanted to touch on, and he decided to do it through the genre of horror. So it's a horror film with a lot more deeper meaning, though, which is what I really enjoyed. And also a quick mention before I get into more of a description of this movie, this will be kind of one of a two-part, I guess, almost episodes on Ari Aster, two of Ari Aster's films. This first one is Hereditary, that came out in 2018, I believe. I believe it's summer 2018.
I think it's 2018 or 2017.
But I believe it's 2018. I believe it's summer 2018. And then his next movie, Midsommar, another horror film, came out in 2019. That one's my favorite one, so we'll be very excited to talk about that the following week. But anywho, Hereditary. So it's following this grieving family. It starts off with, the movie immediately starts off with a death. So it's the death of the family matriarch, the grandmother. And they're attending the grandma's funeral. Things are a little odd here and there, but the family's just trying to grieve.
Nothing like super out of the ordinary.
Yeah, nothing super out of the ordinary. The family's just trying to kind of grieve and move on, and no one really seems all too disturbed. Like the Annie, who plays the mom in this movie, Annie is doing fine. And fine for the most part. She seems to be, she's not breaking down. The husband, Steve, he's, just kind of trying to keep the family together. And the kids all seem fine for the most part. The only one that seems a little off is Charlie, who's Annie's daughter. Charlie seems like a kind of a strange child, but also makes a few kind of remarks of, she's the only one that actually seems to really be affected by the fact that
she seemed super withdrawn, like even throughout the movie, like she seemed super just not in reality, like she was just like existing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there's an early scene where she asks her mom, like, grandma's gone, now what do I do, and then what do I do when you're gone? And so we could tell immediately that Charlie has a kind of a close connection with the grandmother. Long story short,
well, the grandma wanted her to be a boy.
Yes, yeah, which you find out in a couple of scenes, and you'll find out why later, also in the movie, why the grandmother really wanted her to be a boy. But at the moment, all we know is that Charlie had a really close connection with the grandmother. Long story short, after some kind of weird things happen, Charlie actually ends up dying because of some mistakes made by her brother, Peter, Annie's other child, Annie's son. And so this is much more drastic. So whereas after the grandma died, it was kind of like, okay, we all expected this, family's moving on. Charlie dies, and it's only, I think it's like a week later. It's supposed to be pretty quick.
Yeah, it's not that long after.
Yeah,
and
it's like a week or two.
it definitely gives you like the movie definitely does a good job of like foreshadowing or giving you clues as to what could happen, because like at the funeral, Charlie's eating like a candy bar, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom is like, does that, like, it runs over there and just like asks, does she have nuts in it? And Charlie's like, no. And like they're talking to, like, the dad shows up, and the mom's like, good, because we don't have an EpiPen.
Yeah.
So like,
so it hints to you.
so like lets you know that like, hey, like if she eats nuts, like there's gonna be really grave consequences.
Yeah, and that's kind of how she dies. Is she eats nuts, she starts having, this allergic reaction, and long story short, as her brother Peter is trying to drive her to a hospital or home or whatever, Charlie reaches out the window to gasp for air. She ends up hitting her head on a electric pole and becomes decapitated. And this, like, one of my favorite scenes in this entire movie, from the first time I saw it till, most recently, is Peter's reaction after his sister, is basically decapitated. To me, it is like, if you have not seen the movie, go watch it and specifically pay attention to the scene. If you have seen the movie, go back and watch the scene. But this is the best reaction I have seen on film to a traumatic event.
Well, he's tripping too, because he just took a hit from a bong. So
so he's high, he's panicked, he's rushing his sister to a hospital, and then bam, she hits her head on a light pole as she's reaching out the window, gasping for air, as he's driving at like 90 miles per hour or something like that. And they're in the middle of nowhere too, and in this scene, Peter is just frozen. He is absolutely frozen. They like just struck by anxiousness, anxiety. He doesn't know how to move, doesn't know how to like look. He's just barely keeping himself together. But yeah, I'm not going to describe the scene too much. Just really go and watch it. Long story short, Charlie dies. And then this is where you really see the family start grieving. The mom does not know how to handle this. The mom is just completely broken up and completely distraught, and it's just seen crying and crying and crying. Mm-hmm. And then from here on out, the movie just is this family dealing with the grief of these two deaths, specifically the death of the daughter Charlie, and all the actions they take in order to deal with this. They become more isolated from each other. They start reaching out to find help in different things. Peter is really kind of turning to drug use. Annie is starting to turn to some kind of witchcraft stuff, which she's not even planning on. It's just someone else brings her into it, who we later find.
Well, it's kind of cultish.
It's
really.
a cult. It's a cult. She didn't know, but her grandma was part of a cult, and the grandma's friend is slowly putting spirits basically inside of Andy's house to kind of go along with this cultish belief. And yeah, that's really the movie for the most part. It's just the family grieving and trying to deal with this trauma, and each of them are kind of taking the wrong steps to deal with it, which comes to a head towards the end of the movie where
I see what you did there.
No pun intended. But towards the end of the movie, where there's this spirit who we kind of find later is named Damon, who's one of the kings of hell, and the cult has been trying to revive this demon spirit, but it needs to be in the body of a boy.
Yeah.
And so when Andy had Peter, Andy mentions that her mother originally tried to take Peter as her own, but Andy was really close to Peter, and so Annie let the grandmother really kind of take care of Charlie. And this is where Charlie mentions at one point that, yeah, grandma wanted me to be a boy. And this is particularly why, is because the demon entity Damon kind of required a male body. And so, yeah, so this whole thing comes to a head where Annie has this demon inside her, and then Annie's chasing Peter around the house for like the last 15 minutes of the film. And it is just one of the the last 20 minutes of this film, my hand was glued to like the movie theater seat. I was frozen, and it was just seeing all this come to a head. And then at the end of the movie, we see the spirit pretty much go inside Peter, and Peter is praised by the coal. And this is like the last 30 seconds of the movie. Peter is praised by the coal as Damon, and is, I'm saying the name of the demon, right? What was Damon?
No, it's something.
I'm completely wrong. I might have been saying the wrong name.
You are actually. I don't. I was going to correct you, but I don't know the name of the spirit. So it's
Damon,
like
Payman.
Yeah, it was.
Payman.
I was like, it's something with
That's
a
right.
P.
It wasn't Damon. That's right. Sorry. The demon was Payman, and
that's it.
And it took the body of Peter, and so they're all like, "All hell, Payman," and then the movie just kind of ends. So it gets really weird, but. Yeah, overall, I would say that's the general description of the movie, but you really need to watch it to kind of see intricately how this family dynamic works out in the grieving. And particularly the mother, Annie, and the son, Peter, give amazing performances. Amazing.
Yeah, that's like the pivotal relationship I feel is in this movie is Annie's relationship with her son. Mm-hmm. I think that like obviously like her relationship with Charlie is also very important, but I think once Charlie passes away, like that's when the movie kind of shifts gears. Mm-hmm. It's definitely very interesting. I think when I first watched this movie, because this is maybe like my third or fourth time watching this movie, mm-hmm. And I still notice different things every time I watch.
Oh yeah.
But
for like my first 8 times watching it, I noticed different things.
Something that when I first watched this movie, like I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I'm trying to get a picture of it. And I remember when we watched it, like one of the things that Annie's working on, I don't know exactly what her job is, but she is building like these tiny little like set pieces out of like, it's not like blocks or anything, but she's just like, it's like little like
they look like dollhouses, almost.
Like little dollhouses, but like they're not like specifically dollhouses. Like they're really realistic, like scenes. So like she builds her house. She builds like a theater. After Charlie dies, she like recreates the scene where Charlie passes away, and so. Like that's just what she's doing, and the whole time, like the people that she's working with, like ask her, like obviously we understand you're going through the grieving process. Like we're here to support you, we're here to help you in any way we can. And then at the end of the movie, like when they're doing like the ritual scene, like there is some sort of model of the ritual scene, and then that's when the movie fades to black. So when I first watched this movie, my first thought was like, okay, like the mom has some sort of ability to predict the future by like creating these dollhouses. And you kind of realize that like she actually has very little control over anything, and that there's like some sort of higher power that's in the play here. I think I know that you kind of moved on from the scene, but like one of my favorite scenes of the movie is that scene you were talking about, where just goes like from that scene where like he realizes his sister's dead, like from that moment to when his mother discovers his daughter.
It's like the best body. 2 to 3 minutes of the film. It's
like
so good.
That scene where it's just on him. It's like like I think that's what this movie does really well. Is that it takes like a lot of movies would leave Peter and then go focus on a different character, but you
sit in anxiety with him,
like you feel like you are Peter in that experience. And so like Peter has his oh crap moment, and he's coming to like he's like realizing quickly that he messed up, and that his sister is no longer with them, and it stays with him, and then goes back to like he goes straight to bed, but he doesn't get any sleep, and then you hear him like listening to his parents' conversation.
The camera never moves off of him.
Yeah, the camera stays on him, which is very odd because usually the mom's the main protagonist of this movie. So like like most of the movie is focused around the mom. So it is a little weird. Well, weird's not the right word, but like it's different.
It's a different
choice.
Like,
yeah. It's different that it's focused on him. And so you hear the mom instantly start crying, and like what I absolutely love is that it seems like the mom never stops crying
for days.
Like she cries when she discovers the body. She cries when they're at the funeral. She cries with
in
Steve
bedroom,
consoling her. Like she's like nonstop crying.
Real quick, and this scene is also that whole crying through like multiple kind of scenes. It's also replicated in his next movie, Midsommar, too. But we'll talk about that later. I just want to mention that real quick.
Oh, cool! And it's been a while since I've seen Midsommar, which is why I'm excited for next week when we can rewatch it again. I think that the mom is obviously struggling because she goes. I mean, after the mom, like when she's giving her eulogy for the mom at the grandma's funeral. She mentions that she's not really close, and then when she goes to the support group. She blames herself, but she doesn't know why she blames herself. And so she, is struggling with processing her feelings. She is blaming Peter for Charlie's death, but, because, Charlie was supposed to be taken care of by Peter at the party, and Peter leaves her alone so that Peter can kind of, spend time with his friends and get high, and then that's when Charlie eats a chocolate cake with brownies with chocolate cake with nuts in it. But it was really the mom who kind of forcibly encouraged Charlie to be there, because Charlie said I don't even want to be there, which too. I'm not trying to say that this is the mom's fault, because I at the end of the day, I don't truly believe it's her fault that Charlie died. Yes, she's forcibly making Charlie go, but I think she's first of all, she didn't realize that Peter was going to go to a party, because she was told that they were going to go.
Be no drinking.
It was going to be it was a school barbecue, and that they weren't going to be drinking. So she didn't really realize that it was going to be an actual party, and I think that as a parent, you're going to try to get your kids to interact with other kids, especially if your child is struggling to make friends. It doesn't seem like Charlie has any friends. And so I think that the mom was well-intentioned. And so I don't put fault on the mom for Charlie dying, even though that's what Peter suggests in a dinner time argument, which I mean, that's fair.
Well, when you look at it, Peter doesn't come right out and suggest it. You never get a hint that Peter ever blamed the mom until the mom comes at him. It's almost as it's like a defense. It's not until the mom starts attacking him that he goes well, what about you, mom?
Well, he's because she's yelling at him about accountability.
Yeah.
And she's
probably the second best scene in the movie.
Yes. She's yelling about him about accountability and trying to stay strong, and no one wants to fess up for what they did. And I think that Peter does have a valid point of pointing out that Charlie never even wanted to be there, that Charlie didn't even want to go to this party. And so it's kind of pointing out the fact that his mom isn't perfect either, and that I don't think there's equal blame, but I think that part of the blame does fall on the mother for really not taking into Charlie's considerations, because again, as we said earlier, Charlie was close to the grandmother, and so I mean, she was seeing aberrations of the grandmother multiple times. She saw an aberration of her grandmother in the field outside of her house, and so obviously she was struggling and grieving in her own way, and so forcing her to go to a party when she's not feeling up to it is not the best thing to do. But I don't think it's the mom's fault that that I think that like if I look at it, like I fully put like 80% of the blame on Peter, and 20% on the mom.
See, I'm the opposite. I actually don't put almost any blame on the mom, because to me, that seems like a very normal thing to do. That happened to me multiple times as a kid, where it's like, the parents want the child to like go be social and interactive, or go do something. So like, hey, you're gonna go to this party, or like you're gonna go hang out with these people or friends or whatever. And like from the information that the mom got was that this is just a school barbecue. There's no reason why Charlie shouldn't have been there. The only critique I would say is that Charlie is obviously younger than Peter. And if it's a party or even a school party for older kids, why in the world would Charlie be going? And so, to me, that's the only critique. But to me, I actually felt like the mom was pretty like normal in the fact that, Charlie was at home not doing anything. Her older brother was going to a school party. And so it was like, all right, well, take your sister with you, So I don't know. For me personally, I don't put any blame, but
I think the reason why I put part of the blame, and also it's just kind of, before I get into that, like I think it's weird because I think when I first saw the movie, I thought the daughter was like 9 or 10, but then she mentions that she's 13. So like that kind of
I figured
that's what I thought. She looked like she wasn't 13. She doesn't look pretty.
Like she looks like she could be like a child or a preteen, either one.
Yeah, but the reason, I think in a normal situation, like, the mom isn't really much to blame. And the only reason why I am putting like 20% of the blame on the mom is because of the timing of it all. Because it doesn't seem like she's taking into consideration like Charlie's personal
Probably
grieving.
Needs some warm, yeah.
And like if it was like, if the grandma never passed away and Charlie was being forced to go to this party, I probably wouldn't put any blame on the mom, because the mom has no like foresight, no reason to think that anything is going to happen. Yeah. But like, I think because of the fact that Charlie was grieving in like her own way, that like, and forcing her to do something that she really didn't want to do at that time, she's not in the headspace to be at a party. Like, I think that's why I'm like, she kind of like, overwhelming blame is to Peter, but I do think that there is partial blame on the mom for making her go to that party.
Yeah, I can see that too, especially when you talk about in light of the grandma's death and how close Charlie was with her grandmother. She didn't really consider Charlie's like personal need to mourn and whatnot. But I guess the only reason that like, and this isn't a good thing, but the only reason that I don't know, I guess I just don't even view it that way is because how often do parents take into account their child's like personal emotional needs? Like, it's, to me, it's just like not.
Well, that's part of the problem, though.
Yeah, that's like, that is a problem.
That's part of the problem, though. Like, I think that like that's even like a bigger critique on society at large is that like we're so like
parents know best, so
yeah. I think, and I'm not, and I know that my parents listen to the podcast. So, I would like to say that my parents did a really good job of letting me process
Shout out
emotions.
Andy's parents, great job.
And I'm not saying that all parents don't do that, but I think with older parents outside of mine, like I think that they don't necessarily take into account, especially when they were kids. Yeah. I think like back in like the 90s, early 2000s, and before then, like mental health wasn't as big of a thing.
Exactly.
And
no
so
one was
like,
talking about it. Really
I think Gen X parents, I think millennial parents are going to be a better suit to deal with some sort of emotional and mental health crisis and mental health issues. Exactly. So I think with that perspective, like I think the mom does deserve some part of the blame because of the fact that she did not take any consideration into the mental health of her daughter.
That's fair. I guess I would give her as much blame as I would give almost any parent in like that situation. Just not really considering the mental health of the daughter. But either way, so Peter never really blames her until he's attacked, which this is the second best scene in the movie. They're all at the dinner table and the mom is just, and once again, this is the family, the whole kind of theme of this movie is grieving and how like healthy and unhealthy ways of grieving. And in the scene, they're all at the dinner table and Peter hasn't really, as far as we could tell, Peter hasn't been able to talk to anybody about this incident, and doesn't seem like the mom or them ever talked about it. Oddly enough, that's kind of the feeling you get. And so Peter's sitting here just trying to eat dinner. The dad's trying to just eat dinner, and the mom is the one that looks like a pouty teenager. The mom is just sitting there, just not happy, and then Peter says something like "thanks for dinner" to the dad because the dad cooked it, and then the mom just scoffs, or whatever. And so Peter's like, "Do you have something you want to say, Mom?" And the mom's like, "Nope, I think everything's already said." And he's like, "Well, you obviously have something you want to get off your chest." And he keeps pushing her. And eventually she snaps, and this is one of the best performances that she gives in this movie. She just starts yelling at him and just unleashes this rage. And the thing is that
it was all built up. It was all built up inside.
And the thing is, she never, in a healthy manner, just talked about what she was feeling. She never went to Peter and talked with him about the incident. From what we could tell, she just kind of had all this pent up rage, and then she was just getting mad that nobody was addressing anything, and so she just freaks out and starts yelling at Peter. And she even mentions that she doesn't necessarily blame. I can't remember the exact wording, but she basically says that she doesn't really.
She says that it's not like her. She knows that she says in the argument that it's not Peter's fault.
Yeah,
she knows that and she acknowledges that Peter is grieving too. But what I think it comes down to, and I was saying earlier, she really just wanted Peter to be accountable for his actions. I think that was the biggest takeaway from the argument, because I watched it I just watched it last night, and it was just she was trying to be very understanding of what Peter was going through, and that she realizes that it wasn't necessarily Peter's fault. She just really wanted Peter to be accountable, at least acknowledge what he did. Because it just seems like they were all walking around on eggshells. I think the dad is kind of I don't want to say he's the hero, but he's probably the most innocent character in the movie, because first of all, it's his mother-in-law that passed away. It wasn't even his mom. Yeah. And he's doing his best.
He's just trying to keep the family together.
Yeah, exactly. He's just trying to keep the family together. He is trying to be there to support his wife. He's being very patient with her as she's working on her project. He does get very irritated with the mom not really showing any sort of connection with him or the family, which I think the mom was just grieving, and that was her own way of grieving. So I think there was just a lack of communication on their part. But
that's what this whole movie is a lack of communication due to grieving.
I think that's what that's exactly. I think that's the point of the movie. This whole movie is about how people process death in the family, and it's not even this family. It's really just anyone in general. The cult member Joan, she lost. I think, was it both or just? I know at least one, but she lost
I think I'm pretty sure it's both. She lost her son and grandson in a drowning accident,
and exactly in a drowning accident. And so it's how anyone in particular deals with grieving, which, when you think about it, was it really an accident? I'm asking you, do you think it's an accident? Because exactly? Because it's a cult, because she was part of the cult. I also am
sorry, exactly. Sorry, repeat the question. Exactly is what an accident?
The death of her son and grandchild, because maybe they were trying to do the ritual with them, but they realized that it couldn't work with them.
Well, here's the thing. We don't know if that story is true, because that's the story that Joan tells Annie.
It's true to some degree, though.
Well, no, because the spirit comes and starts writing on this chalkboard, and it's talking like it's a little child, "Hi, Grandma, love you," and it's spelling like a child too. So but the thing is, the whole time Joan is just trying to trick Annie so that Annie goes and repeats this phrase and brings the spirit into her own
I mean,
house.
yeah, it could have been the actual grandma the whole time.
It could have been grandma. It could have been payment. So
it could have been someone.
We don't have reason to believe that Joan was even telling the truth about that. Joan was there from the start to get Annie, and so she might have been lying about that whole story.
I have no evidence to back this up, so this is just definitely more of an opinion. But I definitely get the hunch that the support group was the cult. Like, I think that was.
Oh. Well, you know what? They did slip the little pamphlet directly into the mailbox. And I don't know if you noticed the scene, but they directly slipped that pamphlet in the early scenes in the mailbox of the family. And so
I did not notice that.
So definitely it was purposeful to get Annie to that support group. That was definitely a thing.
Yeah, because no one talked about it.
No one.
No one talked to her. That's right. So that's why I honestly believe that the support group was the cult in disguise.
Possible. That's very possible.
Because like no one, like the father, the husband never said that you need to get help. I think that the worst was that he mentioned in an email that she's having like a mental breakdown.
Yeah,
like he never told her that she needs to get help. No one. So I think the cult was the support group.
Yeah. And that's even a criticism of the husband. Like there's really criticism going on for everybody, because as the husband kind of started to see his family break down, he didn't really, I mean, he has a lot to deal with, but he didn't really take the right measures in order to help deal with it. Like he didn't refer his wife to, therapy or needing some help. And he actually said that at the very end, right before he dies, he tells Annie, enough with this foolishness. Like, I should have said something earlier because I knew something was wrong earlier, but I didn't.
Yeah. And I think that, what a terrible way for him to go.
Oh, God.
A burn book. Gosh. Susan, when you listen to this podcast, please don't kill me by throwing a book into the fire so that I randomly get set on fire. Please don't do that to me. There's other ways.
There's something less painful, please.
Just slowly poison my food or something. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, overall, like I said, there's a lot of really great scenes in this movie. A lot of themes of grief, trauma, dealing with that, family relationships, stuff like that. But with all that being said, Andy, so seeing how the movie just kind of ends in this really weird, random kind of, or almost seemingly random part, do you want to just really kind of in detail describe that ending and then what you think happens after?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. I'm going to take it off from the scene in the house with the son. The son is walking around, like, I think that it was shortly after the father. It was actually the morning after the father died from getting burned alive. He comes downstairs. The son comes downstairs, discover his father burned to a crisp. Mm-hmm. Like, the only way that he's able to identify him is by the ring. Mm-hmm. And so something that I really appreciate about Susan is that she pointed out that, and I didn't notice this, and I mean, maybe you noticed it, maybe you didn't, but I didn't notice it when I watched it until she said that the father's head was missing. The father's head was mysteriously taken off. And you see the mom in the back. The camera's focused on the son, but you can see in the background that the mom is like up on the, like, near the ceiling, like on like,
you might not see it the first time you watch it because it's very purposely hidden to where, like, you don't know she's sitting in that, or you don't know she's in that corner till like maybe 10-15 seconds in.
Yes.
And can I just say, being in a movie theater watching this, you like, it's just dead silent. But all of a sudden you hear one person go like, "Oh," and then another person go like, "Oh," and then all of a sudden, like, people are like, "What is?" And then all of a sudden the entire theater, it's like, "Ah!" People are just like slow, like, people are like, "Wait, what is everyone screaming at?" And then you look closer and you see, and you're like, "Oh crap.
It's definitely one of those things that's like once you see it, you definitely can't unsee it because it's not like she just randomly appears. Like she is there.
She's been
time.
there. You just have to notice it.
You just have to notice it. But like once you see her there, like you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And then like he like turns around to like look up, and then the mom appears in the corner of the room that he wasn't looking at and like chases him. They're like chasing him to the house.
Terrifying.
It's a terrifying scene. This is like when the movie is reaching its climax.
Yeah.
The mom's chasing him throughout the house. He runs up into the attic where there's a bunch of flies in the attic. And he closes it and he's crying and he's like, "Mommy, I love you. Please stop what you're doing." And like the camera pans
so good
the other side. And you see the mom is just like, imagine like you're on the floor
on all
and like
fours?
you're like on all fours and you're just smacking your head on the floor. Like that's what the mom's doing to like the door, and it's just like nonstop. And she's
to the
like,
ceiling though. So it's
to the
like she's
ceiling.
hanging on the ceiling and just banging like an absolute maniac.
She's a woman possessed.
Yeah, it's like it's obvious she's possessed. She's just banging her head ridiculously against this door.
Yes. And so the son's like freaking out trying to get her to stop, and I think the son looks up and suddenly the sound stops, and then he like looks up and he hears like this like squishing sound.
Oh god.
And he sees the mom in the attic like jabbing her neck like from both directions, and he's like getting freaked out.
She has a piano wire.
Yeah. Oh, it was. Oh, I didn't notice it was.
Yeah. So if you hear at one point where Peter's walking down the house originally to kind of hear what's going on, to like try to figure out where his family is, you hear a pluck of a piano wire, and that's what she's cutting off her head with. She's just slicing it back and forth on her neck.
Oh, that makes way more sense, because I'm literally like, what is she? Susan and I are both like, what is she using?
Yeah,
to, like,
she's just
stab
slicing the
herself
piano wire back
that
and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and like until it's off.
So obviously Peter's freaking out.
Seeing his mom decapitate herself.
And then he looks down and he sees like these old people that like were actually part of this cult come, and he's scared. Or I don't know if that was first or second, but either way, this is all happening, and he like just gets scared, and I don't know if he becomes possessed or if he's just like, you know what, like I'm out, and he runs out the attic window and falls to his death. And then that's into the garden, and then you hear a thud, which is actually the mom's
head.
Which is the mom's head falling off of her body.
You don't see it. Which
you don't see it. You just hear the thud.
Which is one thing Ari Aster's so good at, is that he'll have the camera on one person or whatever, but what you're supposed to be focusing on is the sound of something else happening elsewhere.
Yes,
and so
definitely.
That was it's so good.
Yeah, and then the spirit of Payman comes into, well, it's Payman and Charlie. It's like the two spirits together. And then they go into the body, and then the mom's body is like levitating up into the treehouse.
So weird.
They go into the treehouse, and you could tell at this point that Peter is no longer Peter, and that Peter is now Payman / Charlie. He goes up in the treehouse, and there's a bunch of like, either you're naked or you're in like white gowns. On his way to the treehouse, he sees a bunch of naked old people / people in white gowns. He actually sees like the same dead deer that made him crash into the telephone pole, like as he's walking to it. And then when he's there, like he sees a picture of the grandmother, and it says like Queen Lee or something, like it says Queen something. So obviously that's to symbolize that the grandmother was like the leader of this religious cult. And then someone is talking to him, whether that's the grandma or if that's someone else, I'm not 100% sure. But then it's basically saying like, welcome, Charlie, like you are in this body. You actually are being controlled by Payman, the 8th king of hell. Please lead us to like righteousness and retribution, something like that, like along that lines. And then that's when they're all saying Hail Payman, and in the very final quick scene is it's one of the doll houses that it looks like the dollhouse of what the mom was making of that specific scene where like they're all kneeling to Peter / Charlie, and then it's like hail payment, and then it cuts to black.
Hail payment.
It's like no joking. So my theory. Very little is known about these people reaching out to Annie about the art project. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's intentional. Mm-hmm. I think we are led to believe that this is like a project for a museum. Mm-hmm. And I know that when I first watched this movie and I was talking to you about it, that like I completely dropped the idea of Annie being in control of everything. Mm-hmm. But I am actually going to go back onto that train really quick.
Okay.
But instead of Annie being in control, I think it's I think it might be Payman or the cult leaders or someone else within the cult that is creating these scenes. Mm-hmm. And that there is no actual like art collector, distributor. There's no like museum thing. I think that the people contacting her are the cult leaders, and they want to know her progress, because I think that they were waiting until the stars aligned, and like there is no mentioning of stars aligned, but I think that they're waiting until all the pieces are in place to enact their ritual. Mm-hmm. And so you notice this, like they reach out to her a couple of times throughout the movie, and each time they reach out to her, something pivotal happens. And the last time that these people reach out to her, she has some sort of breakdown where she just destroys everything. Like she was working on a theater, and she had gotten a voicemail, and she just was like, they were like, obviously we understand, we want to give you as much time as we need. Let us know if there's anything that we can do for you. And I think that that's really the cult leaders. Like, they don't want to like rush her. Like they understand like this is the creative process, and like it's all part of the plan. And I think that like they're trying to keep tabs on Annie to figure out how she's going along with her progress. Because I think part of it is waiting for Annie to realize that she is a medium and that she can conjure up spirits. And I think once Annie is able to conjure up spirits, she's able to kind of help guide Payman to Peter's body. Mm-hmm. And so I think that last scene where the dollhouse is made, I think that it was created by a higher power to let us know that like this was scripted. Mm-hmm. Like everything that happened was meant to happen. Like nothing happened by accident. Mm-hmm. And that it was all by design, and that the grandmother's death might have been the catalyst to get this thing started. Was Charlie was always meant to die. Mm-hmm. Peter was always was supposed to be Payman's body. Mm-hmm. And that because like the grandma wanted Peter first, but the mom didn't let it. So I think once there was like a breakdown in the family, that was the cult's moment to take advantage of them and kind of get them back on track for their ultimate plan.
Okay. I like that. And I mean, I fully agree with you that like it was kind of always planned. So for instance, there's the scene where Peter and Charlie are driving to the party. They pass that light pole, and like the camera's following the car, but when the car passes the light pole, the camera just looks at the light pole, and there's the symbol of the cult is like on the light pole, light pole. And so the entire time, there's like little hints here and there. That,
the grandma's body was left in the attic, and like there was like the symbol painted in blood.
Right,
the mom was actually wearing the necklace, like, and she says that she was wearing the necklace, but like when I rewatched the movie, like I noticed she was wearing the necklace. So she subconsciously might have known about the cult this whole time, and then was kind of awakened to the cult when she realized what was happening.
Oh, that's a possibility. So how I see this continuing is, so the end scene when you were mentioning where the mom's like using the piano wire and like it sounds so nasty too. All you hear is this, it's like just swishing, just and then just gets faster.
Jimmy, put in the sound effect for the piano wire.
Right. Oh God. But then it gets faster. It's like, and it's just fast, and then you just hear that head drop. But Peter freaks out, jumps out the window. You assume he dies. I don't know if he dies or not, because to me it looks like he jumped out the window and he is just kind of laying there stunned for a little bit. And we see this little shimmer go inside of him, which is supposed to be the spirit. Apparently, this little shimmer goes inside of him. And after 5 or 10 seconds, he like slowly gets up, and not like just like a up. It's just like him, as if he took a big fail. So he's like slowly like getting himself up, and he sees the mom's body, as you mentioned, hover to the treehouse. And so there's a light in the treehouse, and so he just starts one, and he doesn't say a word for the rest of his time.
Well, he also clocks his tongue, which is what Charlie does.
He does do the whole thing with his tongue.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he does, and that's what Charlie does. I mean,
the entire movie,
even after she dies, like part of like Peter never forgets about her, and like he always feels her presence. And then whenever you hear it, like you hear it throughout the movie. So yeah, but you can continue on.
Yeah. But also there's one scene in the movie theater where like the mom's driving, and you hear that in the back as she's driving, and literally the entire movie theater jumped. It was like, you just show, and everybody was just like, just freaks out. But so you see Peter do this thing, this kind of little tongue click that only Charlie does. So this lets you know that Charlie is in Peter's body. Charlie is in Peter's body. So far, we still don't have reason to believe that this new demon or whatever Payman is in Peter's body, because if I'm being honest, this thing or whatever, as soon as Peter gets up, kind of reacts more like Charlie. Like it doesn't act like a 8th century demon who's coming back. It acts kind of like a child. And so like Peter gets up, Peter like sees the body floating to the treehouse. Peter starts walking over. He sees these cult members naked in like the forest as he's walking over, but he just continues to walk in. And then as he's coming up the treehouse, he sees all these people in there. Once again, Peter never says an entire word. He looks so confused, so confused. And so he's just kind of looking at what's going on. And then, as you mentioned, Joan kind of explains, Payman, we brought you back, desired male body, blah, 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 all this stuff like that. Then they put a crown on his head, and then they start saying "Hell Payman," and the movie ends. So, in my opinion, I think that they put Charlie inside the body of Peter, and I don't know. Like, I don't know. It gives me really no reason to believe that whatever transformation where Payman was supposed to take over actually really took place. I don't know, like the spirit going inside Peter definitely kind of hints at that, but the way Peter's acting, I don't know, there's nothing that really makes me think that. So I am actually more inclined to believe that this is just now Charlie in Peter's body, and Charlie kind of has to figure out, all right, am I going to go along with this? Do I run away? Do I play into this whole Payman thing? And what if
Charlie is Payman this whole time?
And yeah, that's the thing, but Charlie could be Payman, but I guess my confusion more so goes with, okay, now what? Because they kind of mentioned how they reject the Trinity and that they believe that, their riches are going to come from Payman and all this. But I don't know. I still see Charlie just as that little kid, but now just in Peter's body. And so I kind of see the cult expecting more from Peter than Peter's able to give them, and recognize that this whole thing didn't actually work or didn't work right or whatever, and that it just kind of turns into utter chaos. And I honestly think that they end up killing Peter and trying again.
That's an interesting take. I don't know. I think that it's fair to question whether or not the ritual worked in the sense of like, is it payment? Because I think you're right in that like it's definitely no longer. I don't think it's Peter anymore. Like I think I think it's Peter's body, but I don't think Peter's soul spirit is in his body anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I agree with you that the movie doesn't make it super clear if it's payment or not. I think the only reason, not the only reason, but like I think the reason why I think it is payment is because this wasn't the first time you saw you saw the spirit, because you saw the spirit earlier with Charlie. Like Charlie is sitting in her room drawing, and then there's like a mystical element / spirit that makes her look out the window, and that's what forces her to go outside and see her grandma's aberration. And like she's doing her thing. I think she might have been starting a fire, but I don't remember exactly. And so I think that it is payment. I think that there's no real way to tell for sure with how the movie ends that the ritual worked, but I think that if there were more time, that we would discover that Charlie was actually payment the whole time. And we also don't know what it was like for Charlie's childhood. Like we don't know what they did to her. Like there was no flashback to see like what sort of experience,
some, like, enchantment or something.
Yeah, like there's no way of knowing. Like she could have done like some sort of ritual to Charlie beforehand,
and I think that probably happened. You're right. I mean, to me, that it kind of hints, because she says that like the mom had been caring for Charlie, and even in the little dollhouses she was kind of making, there's that scene where the grandma's breastfeeding Charlie.
Yeah,
which is odd, you know.
And then in the book, Charlie is drawing like animals, different like symbols, and one of the symbols is like a bird with a crown on its head. And Charlie cut like towards the beginning of the movie cuts like there was like a bird that flies into.
And she doesn't even flinch.
She doesn't even flinch, which is also, I think Charlie had some sort of mystic powers. Like I think that she has like supernatural powers, because like she was getting, I wouldn't say attacked, but like her teacher was giving her a hard time because she wasn't focusing on a test, and like the teacher was trying to get her to focus on what she was doing, but Charlie didn't really want to do it. And so I think she made the bird crash into the window to get everyone distracted, so this way she can go get the bird and cut the bird's head off for it. So I think that there's more to meet the eye with Charlie, and so that's why I think Charlie might secretly be Payman. And so what I think happens in maybe like a second Hereditary is that maybe the whole movie, maybe Hereditary 2 is as a combination of your idea and my idea, because I like to do that, where like we're trying to figure out, did the ritual work? Like, are we dealing with a 13-year-old girl, or are we dealing with the eighth king of hell? Like who is really in charge here? And I think that if there were a Hereditary 2, I think that we'd see a lot more supernatural things happening. I think like something that this movie played with a little bit, but not a lot, is fire. I mean, you saw like the father caught on fire. I think the grandmother was in the field, like creating a fire. And so I think obviously the first thing, at least with me, like one of the first things I think of when I think of hell is like nonstop fires all over the place. And so I think that if in a second Hereditary, if it sticks with Peter, that I think you see more of a like divine or spiritual intervention, and like more like forecasted scenes through like the dollhouse telling you things, and that Peter is that person that's causing all of the problems, and it's kind of like people are trying to discover Peter, if he's like a bad person or what's going on. Cause like, again, like he's like a high school kid. So it's like, is Peter really causing all these problems, or is it something else that's happening? And yeah, that's kind of what I kind of envision for like a Hereditary 2.
That's not bad. I can see that going that way.
I know that something else I was thinking about was that they mentioned that he's the eighth king of hell, but there probably are other like kings or other demons, like that they might want to bring back, and so maybe a Hereditary 2 does not even like follow that storyline altogether, and follows a completely different family and talks of a different message, like outside of grieving. Like maybe they talk about a different deadly sin. And they raise a different spirit, and then like the future of this franchise is like connecting these different like hell demons together to kind of take over the world, sort of a thing.
Yo, that's intense.
I know, right? Welcome to my brain.
I love it though. I love it. All right, overall, would you recommend this movie?
Yeah. I think the first time I watched the movie, I definitely liked it more. When I rewatched it, I wouldn't say I hated it, but I think each time I watched it, I just didn't like it as much, which I know that you probably disagree. Like, I think that, or I don't know, you could probably talk when it's your turn, but I liked it because, like, I mean, I got different things each time I watched it, but at the same time, like, when I first saw it, like, I knew that it was kind of obscure, and I was okay with it. But then, like, the next time I watched, like, after I watched it again, I was like, I think knowing what happens in the movie kind of ruins it.
If this is the kind of movie to where knowing what happens does start to ruin it a little bit for you. And I will know, because I've seen this movie, I think 12 to 14 times. And yeah, I will say that, like, I'm at the point now to where, like, I absolutely love this movie. It's one of my favorite horror films ever. But, like, I don't necessarily enjoy watching it as much now just because I've watched it so many times in the past.
Yeah, like once you see it the first time, you kind of know. I would say watch it twice. Like, watch it the first time to get to the scares, and then the second time you watch it, you can kind of like watch for the details and stuff like that. But like after the second time you watch this movie, like you kind of know what's going on, and so it kind of takes away some of the things. So definitely would, not to take anything away from this movie. Like, this movie is definitely, it's great. It's amazing. And I definitely would have no problem recommending it. I think it definitely is for a specific audience, definitely less specific than Swiss Army Man. I think that Swiss Army Man is when it gets a little too obscure, and I don't think Hereditary is obscure enough to where the general public won't like it. I know that my parents were kind of iffy about it. They were like, I'm not sure if I hate it, I'm not sure if I like it. So I know that, like, for some people it might not be their cup of tea, but I also know that there are plenty of people out there that, like, absolutely love this movie. So I definitely would recommend it to anyone.
This is one of those movies to where, like, when I talk to people about it, it was either the most horrifying thing they have ever seen, which for me and my friend who, when we went to go see it in the movie theater, it was like we were shook. Like, it was hard to go to sleep that night. Like, we were shook. But then I had other people who watched this and was like, man, this movie wasn't even scary, this and that. And like, so I don't know anyone who, like, just thought it was okay. Like, most people I know either really liked it or just were not with it at all. And so, yeah, I don't know. But a lot of people, I would say, they definitely more so lean on the side of really, really, really liking it. And so, yeah, I mean, I highly recommend this movie. I thought it was great. I recommend it to everybody if they haven't seen it. I thought Hereditary was good. And this was when I first heard of Ari Aster, and I was just like, yeah, no, whatever this dude makes, I'm gonna watch.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's absolutely awesome. Maybe he should have directed Swiss Army Man. Taking shot at the Daniels.
Yeah, you know. But then, yeah, he followed it up the next year with another horror film, Midsommar, which I cannot wait.
Midsommar. If you were in that population of people that did not like Hereditary, you will absolutely not like Midsommar. Like Midsommar is way out there. Like it's way out there. And so I could definitely see people who do not, if they do not like Hereditary, I would be very shocked if they like Midsommar. And I don't think the same is true vice versa. Like I think that it is possible to dislike Midsommar but like Hereditary, because that's just like how out there Midsommar is. That like I think that it just we'll save it for next week. Well, I mean next week is when we're going to do a comparison. So I think I don't want to get too into it until next time.
Midsommar is definitely my favorite though, but they're both great films. Highly recommend. For me, okay, oh my gosh. So in terms of our rating system, small, medium, large, or big bucket, I am going to give this a large bucket. I'm almost tempted to give it a big bucket, but I'm only going to give it I know, I'm tempted to give it a big bucket, but I'm going to give it a large simply because even though I think this is a very unique horror film, and I hope, I mean, and a lot of horror films have kind of gone in this direction in recent years, of this kind of like more so psychological horror and things of that nature.
Yes, which I definitely appreciate. I love it. I think the age of jump scares and like consistent jump scares, because I think that, I mean, this movie still had some jump scares, or not like drastic ones, but I think the age of like true, like I think of like the really I think of like Jason or like the Halloween movies.
Freddy,
like I think that
like that's kind of
I think that is over. But I think that I love that the horror industry is moving more towards psychological thrillers,
the human psyche, the human experience is horrifying in itself.
I think that that's kind of the natural progression. So yeah, I definitely like that. That's where it's going.
Yeah, and so I'm excited. But yeah, so I'm gonna give it a large bucket just because it definitely, if you are looking, like if someone's like, what's the scariest movie? I don't know if I would recommend this, because I mean, for me and a lot of people, this was terrifying. But you know, it's really not until the second half, maybe the last 30 minutes of the movie, 30, 40 minutes of the movie, that most of the scares come. The first portion of the movie,
it could be kind of slow at times.
Yeah, it's kind of slow at times. The kind of first portion of the movie really kind of building up the drama, which is funny because the director actually said that the original cut of the movie had a whole extra hour of family drama.
Oh goodness!
Yeah,
I am so glad. Like
I would have loved it personally, but
I think the first time watching it, I would have liked it, but I think watching it again, I would have been like, okay, like because I even felt at times that like there's enough build up here.
Yeah,
but I think that's just because I've seen it before.
But yeah, so I'm gonna give this a large bucket. What about you?
You know, I was fully prepared to come in here and give this a large bucket. And I still am.
I was like, what?
You're like, what? I'll give it a caveat. I think the first time you watch it, it is large bucket. Like, I think that this movie is absolutely amazing the first time you watch it. I think where I get a little skepticism and like where it's a little hard to give this a straight large bucket is when I think of like the rewatchability factor, replay value. And like I would say it's definitely not like when you're watching like Get Out or Us or some other psychological thrillers or some deeper meaning films where you can get like something out of it every single time you watch it. So I think that this movie is definitely good to watch one or two times, but if you're going to watch it more than like if you're looking for a movie that you can watch at like nonstop anytime, like I don't think Hereditary is that movie, but it is definitely a movie that like I think you need to see. Like I think that it definitely needs, like if you're talking to friends about like what your favorite horror movies are, like I think that this movie needs to be in your top 10 or like your top 10 watch list.
Yeah, no, fully agree. So audience, what did you think of our continuation of Hereditary? Did you agree? Did you not? Please follow us on Twitter at Poppin Predict and Instagram at poppinpredictions.pod to let us know your thoughts and how you think the movie should continue. And I almost said Annie.
Oh my goodness.
Andy, any last words?
Yeah, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you
Leave
listen.
us a review, please.
Leave us a review. Please, please, please send us some movie recommendations. We absolutely love watching recommended movies. Until next time, keep popping, everyone.
All right. Peace.